For those of us, Ashaji, who follow crimes on a regular basis, it is very heartbreaking to see this almost every other week in one form or the other. And we keep hearing about cases where Muslim men have posed as Hindus and then they try to get into a relationship. And many a times these are underage Hindu girls and who later get exploited. Irshad Ali, for example, becomes Guddu Chaudhary. Faisal Ahmed becomes Atharv. Ali Asgar poses as Anil Jaiswal, and the list goes on. There are forced conversion attempts. There are killings of Hindu girls, and when they don't agree to convert, there's harassment, there's rape. Just again this week we saw in Indore where a Hindu girl was raped, and those who committed this, they said that they will go to Jannat because of this. Now, despite all this, most ordinary, educated, urban Indians, they don't like to talk about it. And especially what I call woke Hindus, who want to always talk about good things and very convenient things. They feel that by brushing aside all this, they are sort of being secular and progressive, and some even think they're helping the Muslim community for some reason. Don't you think that if we ignore this in our public discourse, these disturbing trends, everybody stands to lose?
I agree. I'm always of the opinion that a problem can only be solved if it's first of all acknowledged that there's a problem, right? You cannot deny it, and hence no solution will be found. For me, it was a revelation also about this grooming thing. When I first started talking about the pushback narrative, as I call it, that everybody thought Kashmiris want Azadi. I was one of the first people to stick my neck out and say, no, there are many Muslim majority, silent majority in Kashmir who are pro-India, who believe that their future lies with India. The first people, of course, the Muslims did, the fringe element, jo extremists said they would oppose it. But the first criticism that I started getting was from Kashmiri Pandit girls living in New Delhi. I didn't understand the phenomena. I started researching into it and getting to know it. And eventually, in a few years, I realized that they had been groomed by what I call the Intifada factory young men who believe in Azadi. So for me, it was shocking to think that, I would sit and ask them that, are you not aware that your Kashmiri Pandit women, what they suffered in the refugee camps in Jammu? I've been to those camps and I know I've heard accounts of how horrendous it was for them to, live there in those circumstances. Do you not know this? And then not realizing that the boyfriend or the would-be husband or the live-in partner or the eventual husband was basically somebody of the same mentality who believed in Azadi for Kashmir. So I started connecting these dots that if there is somebody who's opposing my views, it's definitely a woman, a Kashmiri Pandit woman who's been groomed into it. Or for that matter, a Kashmiri Sikh woman. So somewhere or the other, the grooming thing was there. Eventually, as I the internet came and I started interacting, I came across Swati Goyal Sharma's stupendous work. I follow her very closely. For me, if I take her data, agar main ek hafte ka hi le loon, it's an epidemic. Yes. You have these women, and every week, if you keep adding those names, I think the government should have been up in arms. Ki there is a agenda against the Hindu women in this country. Had it been the United States, a serial killer kind of, wo bada documentaries bani hoti, research hua hota, full study would have been conducted, investigation would have been on ki what is happening, and it's across cities. So I do follow, and I started connecting it with my experiences. That yes, and then it goes back to our memories. Male cousins, locker room talk. I am a tomboy. I was always a tomboy, so I would be privy to those private conversations. Generally when they have this thing about the Hindu women, they are like a conquest, right? एक वो हमारे subcontinent में जो होता है ना अंग्रेजी meme, वो भी एक conquest है. Yeah. So it started tying up to that कि yes, there is this general tendency in the Muslim male that they want to conquer. They want to, what would you call it, as the Hindu womb, right, which is tied up to their domination plans of, the caliphate and the Ummah and the world domination. So yes, there is a whole, this, what would you call it, an epidemic against this killings. And, she describes such brutal things, suitcase mein, chopped up, and the whole planning of befriending them as, Hindus and then going out of the way. and eventually when they are married and then converting them. So yes,
absolutely,
you have to acknowledge that it's a problem of humongous proportions, and something definitely needs to be done. The community elders, Muslim community elders, Muslim politicians, Muslim civil society should have addressed this problem as of yesteryear. Should have.
And I think, like you mentioned, I mean, the scale at which it's happening and the frequency at which it's happening is truly alarming. And it's happening across the country. And there's also the other side, which is the way this, like you mentioned, it's a very skewed sort of relationship between the two communities, because when, let's say, there is a Hindu male in a relationship with a Muslim woman, that again is a problem for the Muslim community, because we've seen cases where Hindu boys, there was one case, I think, in Madhya Pradesh, where a Hindu boy was, a young boy was killed because he spoke to a Muslim classmate, a girl classmate. And of course, there was in my own city of Hyderabad, we've seen how a newly wed Hindu man was killed by the Muslim lady's brother in full public view.
That is tied up to honor killings, as we call them, right? So any Muslim, like we have this injunction, theological injunction here, a Muslim male can marry somebody of the, the same book, Abrahamic. They can marry a Jew, they can marry a Christian, because she's of the same book, provided that she starts following Islam. Same goes for a non-Muslim, which is obviously any pagan religion, right? So, but then she has to be converted. The same injunction is not there for us. I cannot go out and decide that I want to marry, a Jew or a Christian boy. Maybe some discussions will happen at home. Okay, he's of the same book, but then he has to convert also. Conversion to hai. वो Jew नहीं रह सकता, वो Christian नहीं रह सकता. But if I start thinking that I decide that I want to marry a Hindu boy, I will most probably be honor killed. 85% तो ये तय है कि I will be honor killed, क्योंकि honor जुड़ा हुआ है इसके साथ कि ऐसे कैसे हो सकता है हमारी बेटी, हमारी उम्मा की बेटी जाके एक नॉन मुस्लिम के साथ शादी, a Hindu.
Absolutely.
Then this whole thing, I want to mention this grooming thing का है with the Rotterdam scandal that we had in the UK. So it's cutting across continents also, right? So it's not just in the, the Kashmiri Pandit girls being groomed. It's not just the Indian Hindu women being groomed. This is happening in the UK. It's one of the most liberal and secular societies. But the kind of reports that we read and the accounts that we read from survivors and all, the UK police didn't even want to acknowledge it for many years, for afraid of being called racist. Because all the men involved are Pakistanis, Pakistani immigrants. And when you see there and hear the testimony, all the time they keep referring to the white, these girls as sluts. They were out to get it. They deserved it. Right? So ये आपको फिर deeper जाना पड़ता है theology में, ये आ कहाँ से रहा है attitude. Most of the Muslim scholars, Islamic scholars say कि ये गलत है जो वो interpret कर रहे हैं कि ये हम कर सकते हैं, ये हमारे इसमें है. लेकिन वो है, वो attitude है, वो interpretation जारी है across groups में, across social groups में, across आपके पूरे इसमें. So something has to be addressed. It definitely has to be addressed.
Absolutely. And I think it's very important that ordinary people who are watching the news make the effort to actually, track what's happening. Because a lot of times these things aren't reported, especially, Arshia ji, I mean, if you're on Instagram, there's a lot of misinformation that happens, and people today get their news from Instagram stories and things like that. And they follow one or two journalists who, of course, are biased, have their own biases, and they don't actually put out these things. But it's important, like you mentioned, to follow journalists like Swati Goel Sharma and others like Nupur Sharma of India and others.
Swati's work is, I keep passing it on. I say, no, this is it's a huge problem. You need to address it. I keep it passing on to people I feel that they should be addressing. For them, it's unbelievable कि नहीं, ऐसे नहीं, that denial is there. ऐसे नहीं है. She is biased. She is Sangi. She is Bhakt. She is right-wing. I said, even if she is all that, the facts are there. Numbers are there. Don't you think this needs to be addressed? There is a problem among the Muslim male. Kuch to gadbad hai.
Yes.
You cannot just label them as right wing or bhakt or sanghi or something and then say कि नहीं ये हमारा problem नहीं है.
Yeah.
Right? So, that's
Absolutely.
the.
I think the denial is huge. I mean, but it's not that difficult to anybody.
The denial is not just about Hindu women. I come from a society which is incest ridden. My late husband was a survivor of incest.
Okay.
Cousin for many years. Very traumatic for him. And he was it's not my story to tell. It's his story to tell.
Okay.
He has written about it. I keep sharing his articles and everything. It was very traumatic for him. But the denial was there. His parents to this day did not know that, something like that had happened. I doubt that his sibling knows about it. I was the only one that he confided to. And of course, the psychiatric doctors that had to help him because he had tried to commit suicide 13 times. He was a survivor of that as well. So this denial in Muslim society that, we are perfect. There's nothing wrong with us. Wo denial extend hota hai when the Muslim males commit crimes against other groups as well, other communities as well. So this denial is not just about crimes of Muslim males against non-Muslims. It's the denial is there among them also. They will never acknowledge that there is a problem of bachabazi in Afghanistan. Yes. They will never ever acknowledge that there is a problem of incest in them also. Considering that we have this culture of cousin marriages, right? So this is not talked about at all. It is mostly brushed under the carpet. And when a person like me stands up and starts questioning, why would you not acknowledge it? The thing is, nahi, umma ka, stigma ho jayega. Umma ke upar question aa jayega.
Yeah.
Do you understand the pitfalls that people like me have to go through? And then facing a lot of flack for it, but this is it. The denial is not just restricted to crimes against non-Muslims. Yes. Even in our society, we don't have any reflection or introspection. Very few, especially in the Indian subcontinent.
Very, very true, Arshia ji. And I think media, even the academia, like you mentioned, I mean, social scientists need to start paying attention to this. And of course, the government, which has to look into the rising sort of trend. Maybe it was always there, but at least we know about it now, thanks to social media and digital sort of revolution.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.